innovative solutions for textiles and materials to come to better products, sometimes also even to reuse what have already been developed. We work for fiber industry, for finishers also, machine industry, for fashion and interiors. And our focus on developing innovative solutions, but also to communicate these. So we help our customers to communicate the stories in traditional as well as in new media. So we want to bridge and connect disciplines, so we have a very holistic view of how things should be handled. And of course, this sometimes is conflicting with the possibilities of our customers, but still they are interested to hear our visions, which sometimes are a bit wild or alien, but helps them to reflect on how they currently work, what would be possible, and how they could proceed in future to collaborate with new, young, fresh designers, because we do a lot of connecting of talent to industry. The problem is that we have the presentation, but we don't have any notes, so the only thing I can propose that I just click you through without notes, because I think otherwise it will take too long. It doesn't work, huh? No. But now it's gone, so... No, it doesn't escape. I think we really have a problem now. Okay, it's back. Maybe it's because of the connector. Is it possible? Yeah. Play. Yeah. So I talk you through. I have no notes, nothing. It's a pity because it was quite an extensive story, and since I'm working in a lot of totally very, how do you say that, diverse projects, I won't remember all the details of what I wanted to share with you. If you want to have the full one, maybe we can try again tomorrow. But I wanted to start with wow, because I think it's very necessary that we also look at the aesthetics of things. We talk here a lot about sustainability, which is our main goal for the future on how we are going to process things in a different way, how we have to rethink everything we are making. But we also think that we should make beautiful things which are desirable, and that it's absolutely not something which is ephemeral or non-important or superficial, because when we do make things interesting and desirable and beautiful, that also adds to the longevity of the product. People will love it, build an emotional connection with these products. So that's why I want to share with you like 5 stories. And we start with the joy of creation. Because we think it's very interesting to look at, think of the idea that we now enter this era in which there's no hard border anymore between the virtual and the physical. That it's interesting to explore also how we can communicate in new ways about textiles and materials, and that a lot of designers are inspired by matter and material, inspired also by changing our views on the future, but do that in a way that it's not being printed off or manufactured, but just existing on screen. So the interesting thing is we're looking here now at flowers, and these are real, but of course they give this like virtual experience when you look at them, and that is also what a lot of designers are playing with. When you look at Audrey Large, she says also that digital technology is an extension of what you do. It's not if or. She uses it to manufacture 3D printed vases and sculptures. And on the left we see Caroline Vang, who doesn't print anything because it only exists on screen. So the smoothness and weirdness of the shapes, the novelty of the surfaces, and the varieties in color and use of light also, which you can have on screen, can be transported also to matter when you use the right technologies. So sometimes I show some pages of Textile View magazine, a trade magazine, and there we also talk a lot about, it's all about sustainability, but also social ventures in its broadest sense. And we also look a lot at young graduates and designers who try to push industry to come to new products with a totally new aesthetic, but also made in a totally different way. So we see the wonderful materials, we see all kind of 3D printing. We see also shapes which are extravagant and bulky and big. And this is all fashion, but it really resonates also in interior design, because there is a generation who really is transcending borders of the digital and the physical, but also of fashion and any other lifestyle product and even their environments. Because it's those products, their environments, the interiors and the fashion that makes their identity. So on the left we see a real-made fabric from Alexander McQueen. On the right, Luke Penry. And interesting to see how amazing the materials are, looking like real, but these are all fake. He's inspired by nature, but translates it into fantasy, fantastic visuals. On the right we see Carlijn Jacobs, who's a photographer and using digital technology to put an extra layer on her imagery, and Ella Caroline Pound, who used technology to create something which is traditionally shibori. It's a traditional technique which looks like high tech. And that's also something I want to do in this presentation, to show you that when you think of phytoprinting, printing with bacteria and algae, like this project, it shouldn't necessarily look like eco-printing. It can look extremely modern. It can look near digital, but it is real, actually real. But it is the same effervescence, luminousness, which we find interesting, which we find on screen and which you would like to translate for real. Chaos and order, a lot of researchers among young designers. They are really working in the lab and trying to make and create products and materials, and to visualize also their ideas about these in ways that are totally unknown yet. And that novelty and that disruption of matter, but also of ideas, the whole idea of designing, is important. Thomas Blanchard, and here, and I had a small text, I tried to remember it, but it was about the fact that we of course don't know how the consumers will embrace that whole idea. And maybe you also think, but how can we use this? Do we want this? Don't we prefer to have things that are tactile? Of course. But it can influence each other, it can influence both, and we think it is a really good new ground to develop new products. On the left we see a digital project from Vinicius Argaujo, and on the right we see Philippe K, and it's a sustainable garment because it's made from offcuts and recycled materials, and it's extravagant in size, but it's real. This is not a manipulated image. There we also see that we can get away, still do recycling, upcycling, but do it in a way that it's aesthetically coming in another era, in a new realm. So transcendent is about the same topic. So also here we think of nature, we are inspired by the natural processes, natural materials, and we see how these translate into imagery, into gaming maybe even, gaming and combining gaming and interiors, maybe also combining gaming and selling interiors. and to see how this can transcend finally into products which looks new. Objects for a new kind of society that has been displayed by Dutch and Virtuals a couple of years ago already. And the interesting thing, they think of future processes. They want to disrupt the whole system, but what they visualize looks like eroded, like historic, like age-old, and that's the connection we think is interesting. So when you look at these fabrics, for instance, these are made using bark. These are totally natural, also mycelium on the right. And here, of course, they have this like natural look and appeal, but looking at it in this context, it could also look like futuristic. Like Pat Leger is using that same kind of color aesthetics in his shoe designs. And these shoe designs, they are sold off as NFTs on the online marketplace. They are not made for real, but they are inspired by all the materials, natural as well as laboratory made and synthetic. So also 3D printing, of course, it's not yet there that we can print off whole furniture and sell it and industrialize it in a way that it's accessible to all. But we also see here that it brings new aesthetics, new surfaces, new use of color, but especially new use of shape. And that whole bulkiness is translating into furniture we are sure in the year to come. Because we not necessarily think of one season and it stops and then we move into another. We don't think that things are going that fast, and we also don't think it goes gradually per season. So some images I show you are already years old. And we take them with us, maybe for another 4 or 5 years, maybe forever. So we think we have to build on technology, on materials which are good, but we can also have to accept the fact that it shouldn't be new because of its newness. So Doppelganger, they use, now I lost, of course, my, sorry, I do something very strange. They development fit for industrialization are the Gitofame system. I think I should explain this properly, because what they do is they use the exoskeletons of plastic-eaten mealworms to develop a circular system that creates biodegradable styrofoam. And styrofoam is a huge problem because an enormous portion of our waste on a global scale is coming from styrofoam. And they found a way for those mealworms to digest it in a friendly manner, not harmful for the mealworms. And on the right we see they developed to optimize the right blend of biopolymers to get a water-resistant product which is really usable, 3D printed from biomaterials. So important to understand that there is so much going on already, and that it's important to also to step over the threshold of your own discipline and to look into other areas to see what is happening there. This is an older project from Nina van Bart, but the tactility, the bulkiness, this is real made, this is not digital. Also the massaging effect when you walk on it and the tactility, it is really like sensory, we think is very important and also something which should continue. And it was really a huge exercise to find out how you can tuft in this dimensional manner. So fabrics that look beautiful, that are harmless because they are natural, but they still look extremely tech because of the soft surfaces and the strange, weird coloring effects. Fabrics that have this skin type effect that are soft to the touch, but also soft in shading, but they are not smooth and even in shading. When we look at the Metaverse House by Andres Reisinger and Alba de la Fuente, they were inspired by Winter Landscape. This is not a real house. They think that digital technology and also these kind of imagery can make people want to live in houses that are only existing on their computer, on their screen. And we think that's an interesting thought. Also here, of course, this can help also nature, because then finally people maybe might buy less and just buy it on screen. These are real, and these are colored using natural dye stuff, look totally smooth, high-tech, silky, and industrial they are, but they are really sustainable bed linens. So that link should be made, and then we have a wonderful future. So the joy of creation is all about happy making, and of course it's also small scale, and it's about repair, it's about ad hoc. We've seen it a lot already for the ones who visited all the lectures. They've seen it also in the trends, which we of course elaborated for the space here, done by Franklin Till. And we really believe that it's important that we look at really into the hearts of young consumers who think totally different, who want to connect and communicate, who think differently of aesthetics, who really like that things are reused, they want to know the provenance of things. And it really has something which has to do with lifestyle, with being a person, but it's also fluidity, fluidity in every sense. And also here you can imagine all kind of different furniture. So Freeling Waters, what they do is he is a mural painter collaborating with another artist, and they are redoing 18th, 19th century cupboards and fixing fashion community. Is from Dave Huckens, you know him maybe from Fantastic Plastic, the project where he made this worldwide community, and he also had an open source system for recycling plastics. And also he does the same here, an open source community for people to share how they can repair, recycle, upcycle. Yeah, it's really very much about repair wear. That should also be done for interiors. She is Jasmine Monseque, aka Space Bread, because she is spraying on furniture, but also on walls, on cars, on all kind of objects, and also rooms and spaces. This new generation likes the upcycling effect, the fact that it comes from waste, that they build it into totally modern products, which is also extremely appealing. So it shouldn't look like it is ragged and made of waste. Max Willebrand Westin, he won a lot of prizes. This is all made using waste plastic bags. It's extremely refined. He really believes in the importance of making things small scale. It's craft, and he is very young. Crafted Trash, looking into the fact that there's this whole generation of makers who is thinking how they can do things differently, who are all trying to recycle plastic of everything, all the waste and the shit we left behind, my generation especially. So it's very important to support them and to see if we can buy into products that has been made in that way. So at Relics, this is a museum pieces. She is an artist, she is not a fashion designer, and she looks into the recycling of products and makes art resume pieces of it. And also that is something which we have to see, because when we look at everything available already, the most beautiful things have been made already. So it's, why wouldn't we make something new again? The only reason might be that you want to recycle what's already there, or recycle the materials, or have different materials which we have access to. But those archives, they are at risk. There is, in Holland, we have an institution who really is concerned about that, because all the archives of the designers, but also of the industry, they are there or not anymore. People throw their things out because they don't have the space. So somebody should invest in the fact that we have to keep what is good design, but also all the exercises and the probes have to be cherished to see if we can use and reuse them in that new context of a future. So natural in its most natural sense. I don't have a clock now, because I can't see this on my screen. Okay, I should move on. This is really about nature. So here we come from the screen. Sorry, I had to go back because she's nice, she's a designer. And she's working with natural materials and natural dye stuff. Of course, this is a big story, also here already in the trend space. Very important, but of course it's all niche. So as an inspiration for industry, we are looking into industrial dye stuff, which has the same properties, but that is still a long way to go. So we are still in a phase that we have to buy it small scale, local, and see if we can afford to buy into these kind of products, because it's extremely expensive. So this artist, designer, he hangs it outside and see what the elements do with the surface, and then looks into the final effect. So not wanting to dive into the process of finishing again, he just sees what the elements does with them. We look in the most strange kind of resources like hair. This is a very interesting, it's a provocative activist project by design activist Sophia Collard. She's from a human material loop. And see, these are knitted out of hair. And these have wonderful performance properties also, hair. And it's not that I'm going to promote hair here, even she isn't. But when you go to her website, you can do a test and you can see then if it would be something for you in future to look into different kind of materials in this sense. But it's only to make us think. Linen, a wonderful material. I don't think I have to elaborate on that. We all know that. It's regenerative and it has this beautiful aspect and even shouldn't necessarily be dyed. It can be used in a natural way. Forest bank, it's made out of wood, but it's made out of all the things found in a space, a building space. So all the offcuts of the building and all the waste materials, they are gathered, but even also the soil, and they are made as components into this amalgamated paste, which is used here for a tabletop. So that whole idea of using wood, for instance, we have to go back then to this wooden textiles by Bureau Belen. It's already years old. This is tapped, this is not woven, this is non-woven. And these are layers which had to be glued together using, now I have to look again in my notes. It's from the paper mulberry tree. It's used sticky potatoes to put the layers together, and then it's finally it had been embroidered in St. Gallen in Switzerland. And then they made it into beautiful textiles, which we really think are extremely relevant now. But also this, you know, basic materials, commercial already. We really think that the raw material, undyed, unfinished, is really a thing which we have to explore. So Les Couchures by Paulin Esparon, she really sees the problem that for the finishing of flax, there is a route. It has to go mostly to other countries even to be usable again, to weave it. And she says maybe we should use the scratched material, so unpolished, unfinished, and use it in a way that it's beautiful to use as textile. Also, this is informed by tradition. This is made from cane, and the waste cane is burnt, which is very bad for the environment. And she, coming from the region where all this cane, this maize, has been, how do you say that? Which crop where it's situated, she finds a way to make beautiful material out of it, which has intrinsic values like for rainfastness. So she really tries to find a way to make it usable and industrial. But when we go back, this is already also years old, but very interesting to see if we can grow. And she's not the only one. There are more designers who do this. Very recently, Loe and Paula Olorcia Escalona, they collaborated to make these growing textiles for a fashion collection. Of course, it was really for show and catwalk, and not a very realistic proposition, but a very interesting one, because it's also about the idea that fabrics shouldn't stay necessarily as they are, and that when they are washed down or when something is growing on top of it, it can be interesting. We can cherish it and we can design it in a way that it will be helpful for the aesthetics. So Studio Hilo is also very interesting. They are Berlin-based. They made these stretch fabrics without using any synthetics in them, because they have this high-density twined yarn. They also have machines to make this, and their whole goal is to come together with all kind of collaborate with researchers, designers, technicians, to come to machines also to make new yarn and to make accessible for designers who really have a problem to buy into the big industrial sustainable fibers and yarns, because these are extremely expensive. So on a small scale base, they can make use of their machines. It's also open source, and it's shared with people who really can also improve it. In the workshops they do together with the people making the machines, making the fibers, and making a fabric. So here it's a combination of traditional craft together with 3D printing, which is used in the sole. She's exploring how we can pass the threshold, but then in a very smooth manner. So we can maybe use it together when we make, for instance, this is shoes, but it could be also for furniture or upholstery. And we look into natural materials which are just soft, really soft, made of wool. And we know that there is a dispute around wool, so I'm not going into the detail of that. That is the whole problem we really have. It's extremely complicated to really do well. So we think the initiatives, the research, the trying to be there, maybe in a couple of years, but at least doing to try, we think is very important. And the Zachte Stad is a project from Christine Meindertsma. There is a flock of sheep in Rotterdam, which brought like 5,000, I think, or 8,000 kilos of wool per year, which was waste because there's not the infrastructure to really turn it into something industrial. It costs more to do that finally than they can sell it off for. And she collaborated with other designers to make beautiful products out of it, because it's an amazing product, which also here has inherent performance properties, which are really very good for interiors. So it's called the Zachte Stad. It's all coming from Rotterdam and the surrounding, and some products are really like end products, but most is experimental. So the final theme, I think I'm even doing well in time. Maybe I rushed a bit too much. Also because you missed part of the details. So you can come back tomorrow if you want. But the Stopia core is once more about aesthetics. But of course, finally, it's aesthetics on top of something which is harmless. That is the main goal of my speech here today. The Stopia core really sounds like fashion, and it is. This will be a big thing. The whole punk, grunge, it will all return. There's very much a feeling that they want to know about the provenance of materials. It has to fit the look which they bring over, and it all has to do with doom and gloom in the outlook, but in a very positive, hopeful way, translated into amazing, exciting products. And this can be also translated into interiors. So looking at Paulina Krischko, she found all the waste sneakers, and she found a way then to turn this into new materials which look like age-old, because it's called a fossil collection. Fossil shoes, she calls this range. And also, again, like when I started, interesting to see how people thinking about the future come to something which look like relics of the past, inspired by the materials they use and the processes they invent during the making. So surface effects, all kind of irregularity. This you've seen already in the previous. This is made from the food waste of a restaurant, and you see all the ingredients. That whole dissecting of how can we make something, where does it come from, how can we turn it into something beautiful but also usable, is really a very important topic. And it looks like concrete, but it's much more beautiful than that, because the oyster shells, they glitter, so you can imagine it's a very luxurious material finally. So it's dystopia core, but in a glamorous way. Also, these are all products of recycling. As we see paper, like rubber types, all product of recycling and turned into something amazing. That whole idea of distressing, and we had the distressed denim, which was my biggest frustration in working in fashion, and I also work in denim industry for a manufacturer who is really, really investing a lot in sustainable development, but still they sell their product also off to companies who just make new pants and make holes and say, okay, it's distressed. And it adds a process and a finishing which is harmful. But there's also ways to do that in a very, very good and proper way, using light, for instance, depending on the type of yarns used, on the looms. On the right, we see a clay dye stuff for textiles developed by a designer, which also brings this whole faded and used look, which is really very much in favor among part of the young generation. And this translated in a beautiful bedding by Totem Project, because my last slides I also want to show something which is already realized, which is industrial, which is not 100% sustainable, I know. There's of course some certifications, but of course there's also some questions. But the look, the whole feel of the product, lobby, thick, a bit heavy, there's really something going on there. That people really want to have the sense they have something in hand which is durable. When they wash it, it becomes lighter, but that's even more beautiful. So it gets a whole history during use. By Borre is a designer who works not only on the product but also on the system. He's a digital knitter, and he made this like Photoshop for knitters, he called it, and you can really buy into the system and then develop your own textile using the parameters they set for you depending on your requirements. So you really can design it from bottom up, and you can control the whole. You have a total transparent production process, and he also collaborates again with the yarn manufacturers. So this whole idea of designers not just making product but also processes, also diving into the machinery is an important thing. So, of course, looking hard and destroyed, but still really hopeful and beautiful. Maybe my worst message today, being here on the exhibition, all having to earn money and stressed maybe because of the fact that economy goes down. We really think the only solution is that we buy less. That we sell less, which is a problem for all of us. So we really have to rethink and leave the path which we have been walking for years. Also, we have to do that as designers, but also our customers, but also the exhibition, because there will become, things change rapidly. And we can also say that we make a sustainable product, but making in itself already is a harmful process. So less and better, it's the best we can do. So I hope it was a hopeful message. Very sorry for the fact that I couldn't give you all the details. I hope it was inspiring for you, and when you want to know more, you can hear me again tomorrow. Thank you.